Welcome, everybody, to TRB Live. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Resistance broadcast. My name is John Hoey. That is Lacey Gillerin, and we're here to talk to you about our favorite movie franchise, Star Wars. We have a lot to get into today. Obviously, if you see the title of the episode, you know that we are going to be spending some time honoring the late, great James Earl Jones, who took the best villain in cinema history. Well, actually helped make Darth Vader the best villain in cinema history. And we're going to have a good time looking back on his impact on Star Wars. But thank you all so much for joining us, whether you're joining us live or on your favorite podcast app. We appreciate it very, very much. If you are with us live, no Ask the Resistance tonight. We're going to be doing some Resistance transmissions later in the show. But we do have super chats available if you want your comments read on the show. Pop those up and you hyperspace right to the front of the line, and we'll get you on the show that way. But most importantly than anything, we just hope you enjoy the show, have a good time. We're talking Star Wars, and like I said, paying tribute to James Earl Jones and a lot of other interesting stuff, which we'll get into in a moment. But first, Gilly, Lacey Gillerin, gonna be not home alone, but solo momming this weekend. How you doing?
It's going to be interesting. I think, honestly, this might be the first time I'm alone with my children by myself for a full 3-4 days. Like, I've never done this before, which is interesting because most people would probably assume, I would think that the mom would be the one that would be, but because of the podcast and me going to all these different things, it's actually been the other way around. Matt gets left with the kids.
Oh, true.
Yeah. So, yeah, Matt's taking a boys trip. So
nice.
I'm trying to think already in my head, like, what do I do? Like, do I bring them to Stu Leonard's for a couple hours? Like, what am I doing?
It should be a nice weekend. So at least you have that advantage where there's the outside option, and you know, there's always the grandparents.
Play date at the Hoey's.
Oh, sure. Yeah. You mean just dumping your kids off and then you going off and having a Thelma and Louise type of weekend? Sure. But no, it's good to see you again, Lacey. I had a day, let me tell you.
You did have a day.
I'm not going to get too into it, but I had a medical procedure this afternoon. I worked this morning, went to a medical procedure where I went under full anesthesia, had that, woke up, back to work, and here I am podcasting because I just want our audience to know that I am your warrior. I am never going to let you down.
You might be a little high right now.
But I am here. I survived. I was texting Lacey before I went in. Look, if this is it, and I gave her all these lists of things to please do in my honor. But then when I got out, I sent her a gif of the Undertaker rising up from the wrestling mat to let her know.
What was the thing you said to me that I was like losing it? Oh, because I was talking to you about something for the podcast on the phone. And before we got off the phone, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm going to probably be alone this weekend. And I was like, but you'll be fine because you have friends. You're like, I don't know if I'm going to have friends anymore. I'm like, why? You're like, because I'm going to be gone. I'm like, where are you going? You're like, I might be dead. Something like that. I was like, what? Oh my gosh.
Anesthesia, though, it's a nice nap. It was like a nice, peaceful drifting away to Never Land for a little while. But here I am. I'm back. I'm ready to go. And we're going to have a good time talking Star Wars. So let's get into it. Yeah.
I do want to bring something up, and people are saying in the chat. So thank you, Kyle. I see some other people bringing it up. We were on Screen Rant's list today, which is really awesome, of the top 10 podcasts that you need to catch for Star Wars specifically. All right. Yeah. Thanks, Chibigon89. Thanks, Danny. It's always nice to be represented on lists like that. For me, more than anything, the thing that stuck out to me about being on that list is that we were listed as like the best fan community, best engagement podcast of including our listeners and fans and community in general. And that meant a lot to me because, you know, there are a lot of Star Wars podcasts out there, but we take a lot of pride in building a space that we all feel welcome and include you guys on our show. So that's really cool.
It's something like that's what keeps them coming back for more.
Oh, yeah.
Not the story about coming out of anesthesia. It's about the community, folks. It's about the community. No, that is an honor. And, you know, we didn't have a chance to say anything about it on social media. We definitely will tomorrow. But yeah, thank you, Screen Rant, whoever over there was in charge of putting that list together to have us included on a list of the top 10 must listen to out of, like Lacey said, hundreds and hundreds of Star Wars podcasts that have come and gone, and we've been here for a while now, and it means a lot. So thank you to the folks at Screen Rant. That really means a lot. I know a bunch of people over there from the past. I'm not sure who's still over there, but it's really cool to see that. I did not expect that. We had no idea about that, so that is very cool. Thank you very, very much.
Happy birthday to Danny too in the chat.
Yes. We had something in the notes for later on that, but that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, well, that's proof that you don't read Resistance transmissions ahead of time, which is what you've always said. There you go.
Sean thought I was lying, by the way, last week when we were talking about it. He's like,
Yeah.
you definitely read those. I was like, no, I don't.
We'll see. All right. Lacey, let's get into this first. The first thing first. Well, first of all, for everybody, I'm
How many times are you going to say first?
Second of all, for everybody, make sure you're subscribed to our show. I know some people in the chat said this is their first time watching, or maybe it's their first time listening on audio. Whether you're on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, subscribe, tell your friends, and join the party. We appreciate it very, very much. All right, here we go. Ewan McGregor, Lacey. He's back at it again. The guy's getting a star on the Walk of Fame. So he bought that, which was nice. But he's also pushing for more Obi-Wan. He's still back out there saying there's more stories to tell between when my show ended off and when Alec Guinness shows up with Luke in A New Hope. And he has a point, because there is 9 years there. Look at me wearing the Solo shirt, make Solo 2 happen. There's 10 years there for Solo. There's plenty of time for Obi-Wan. What did you make of this latest push from Ewan McGregor? Because there hasn't been a lot of buzz beyond him talking about this. Hayden, a little bit. What are your thoughts on it? And would you want to see another season of Obi-Wan?
I'm not surprised he's pushing for it. I mean, he was pushing for it from the moment the season came out. Like from day one, he was like, I'd love to see more. And like the show hadn't even come out yet. He had been the number one fan crusader for this series to be made to begin with, and we know that he was fighting for it for how many years? Like at least 6 years, probably more than that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not surprised that he's wanting more, and I'm sure that's the first question everybody always asks him now. Outside of before, it was, would you ever want to play him again? Now it's, do you want to keep playing him? So, I'm sure no matter what he does, he's gonna keep getting asked that question, because it's a clickable question on the internet. That being said, would I want to see it? Sure. I don't see why not. It depends on what the story is. We have our reservations from season 1 that like it was fine. It wasn't like the best thing I've ever seen from Star Wars, like change my life Star Wars, but it was enjoyable. It was fine. I'm not sure how they would go with the story with Vader, but they did leave it open with Liam Neeson at the end with Qui-Gon Jinn. So would I watch it? Sure. Why not?
What
about you?
My initial thoughts, and we have poll results from our audience as to what they think. We'll get to that in a second. But my thoughts on this have always been, since the show came out, I don't think so. Because if they do Vader, then it starts getting a little crazy. Because then all those New Hope lines get even wilder, where it's like, we meet again at last. It's like, you mean like for the 8th time, you know? So if Vader's not involved, which they could do the thing which I thought they might do in season 1. I don't know if you remember, I was speculating, like, what if they don't really interact, but they sort of are both just missing each other and that sort of thing? Do that, I guess. I like them to leave it alone now, because it's like they had that massive fight at the end of season 1, and he had that crying moment where he was like apologizing to Anakin and stuff. Like, how do you revisit that and then do the A New Hope thing? That's tough for me to swallow.
It was a lot of closure.
Also, Liam Neeson recently said something like, I was happy to come back for Ewan to do that, but I think they need to stop, because I think they do too much. And he's like, I think it would be bad if I kept coming back. So I don't know if he has interested in coming back. So it's, but the thing that pushed me over to do it is Hayden Christensen talking to Ewan McGregor at the Hollywood Walk of Fame star ceremony, and he's like was saying like, he's embodied Obi-Wan. He's like, you know what? He is Obi-Wan. And they pan to Ewan, and he's sort of like humbled and embarrassed a little. And I'm like, all right, give him another season, okay? Just do it. Just give him another season, okay? This is way too sweet. Like, whatever. Like, so I'm sort of like, if they do it, cool. But I don't know if the story's there. If like I always said, if the number one reason to bring him back is because we love him as Obi-Wan, that's not enough to do it. But we'll see. Now, the poll results were pretty one-sided as we asked simply, would you like to see a second season of Obi-Wan Kenobi? Had a lot of votes, so thank you, everybody. And it was 81% yes and only 19% no. So
I said yes.
People on board for season 2 of Obi-Wan. In the chat, let us know what you think if you hadn't had a chance to vote on social media or anything like that. But it's a topic that will continue to be talked about as we learn more about the future of Star Wars on Disney Plus, which the latest reports are they want to go back to one show a year, which to me sounded pretty aggressive compared to what I was thinking, which was they're going to stop for a while. So we'll see what happens. If he does, we'll all be happy for Ewan McGregor. I just hope maybe a different director, maybe a different way of filming it. Give him a little more budget. Let Ewan
less volume.
Yeah, let you and no pandemic filming. Let Ewan have a full gamut of resources to tell a second story, and maybe they could find something really cool that still preserves Obi-Wan hiding out and being away from the Empire. So we will see. But Lacey, it is time to get into our first segment of the day, and that is Will of the Force.
I fear nothing, for all this as the Force wills it.
All right, guys. So, Will of the Force, this is the part of the show that we let you guys take part if you're a part of our Patreon. So head over there, patreon.com/TRB podcasts. It's a way to support this show outside of just listening, liking, following, reviewing, etc. And you want to see us progress and see what we do next and say, hey, I like what you're doing. And you get to be a part of the community there, which is always a bonus, and take part in the show like with this segment. So this segment, we ask will they, won't they questions, and then we answer them and discuss a little bit. So first up, we actually do have a Patreon submission, which is really cool, from Commander Joey Sack. What up, Joey?
Joey!
Will Ian McDiarmid play Palpatine again in live action, or will the Kenobi finale be his last time as Sheevy Babes? John.
He will. He will play Palpatine again.
Are you saying that out of your belief or that you want to see him that way?
I know he's gotten up there. He's got to be around 80 or so. But I feel like there is room somewhere for a flashback or maybe something they're going to hopefully explore with this live action Plagueis thing to give us some cool connectivity between that time and the prequels and the whole tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. They can use CGI or AI to de-age him or something like that. I just with how willing he always is to come back, that's why I'm leaning towards yes. And I'm not saying it's going to be somehow Palpatine returned and it's episode 10 and here he is again. But I think somewhere predating all this stuff, we could see him again, and without it being Palpatine's back again. No, it's like, no, he was alive during this time. Here's a little boom. We're going to insert him right here. Bang, there he is. So I'm going to say yes.
Thanks for the question, Joey. It's very awesome that you submitted this. I'm going to say no. And it's not just because I hate Palpatine and I don't want any more Palpatine in my Star Wars. That is not the only reason I'm saying no. I'm also saying he will not because of the age thing. I think he's up there. I think also they've told that story in several different ways that I just don't see him continuing on as Palpatine, and I don't see them bringing him back. But that's I might be wrong. And I know people like you, John, love Palpatine and want to see a Palpatine younger series.
Yes.
And why are you saying that? Why are you saying it that way?
I don't know. I'm still on anesthesia. Don't worry about
it. Yeah, no, thank you. No more Palpatine. I'm good. And look, I'm saying this with the understanding that I went bananas when you heard his cackle in the Rise of Skywalker trailer too. Like, I was pumped for it as well. But I'm good. I'd like to see something else come out of Star Wars outside of Palpatine. But all right, let's get into the next question. It is, will Jude Law or any of the kids from Skeleton Crew be in The Mandalorian and Grogu? John?
I know it's around the same time frame, but I'm going to say no on this one. I just have this feeling that, because like it's supposed to be sort of Amblin Goonies, obviously. We're doing our show Galactic Goonies to cover it, starting December 4th, right here on youtube.com/@TRB podcasts at 8:30 p.m. East. I think this is going to be an isolated story. I think Skeleton Crew is going to live in its own little bubble. It may affect the greater story of the galaxy, but I'd like to think that it's going to be a nice little story surrounding these kids, and it doesn't necessarily need to, like other Star Wars, connect with all the other things. I'd like to see this story maybe in its own little beginning and end, happy ending. They lived happily ever after sort of bubble. The Jude Law character, if we love him, that could be interesting to see, what he can offer to other stories and characters in Star Wars. So he would be the one, I would think. The kids, I don't think so at all. But I'm still saying no. I'm just leaning that way. How about you?
That's a great answer. I am going to disagree with you, and I think we'll see Jude Law in the movie. I think it's an easy thing to draw a connection, and it could just be him in the background. He could have a line. It could be anything, but it would be silly to me that Jon Favreau is behind these projects, Mandalorian Grogu, Mandalorian this, that, he's helping with Ahsoka, with Dave Filoni, and like all these same people are involved in these projects. You have someone like Dave Filoni that's drawing those connections and making sure everything makes sense on the timeline. You're not going to have these characters also be a part in some way of the Mandalorian and Grogu. I would have a different answer if the show was still filming or if the show wasn't finished. But because we're going into it being completely done and airing in December, and The Mandalorian and Grogu is still filming, if not filming into next year as well, they could easily throw them in last minute, especially if the show does really well, which I hope it does. That people really love the Jude Law character. They could easily put him in The Mandalorian and Grogu for a cameo, and it would just make that much more of an impact in the greater story of kind of the Mandoverse timeline.
But we're not going to bet on this.
Did you want to?
No, I feel like
we can. I've already lost numerous times. I'm really clearly bad at betting. I don't know why I keep doing it, but
so you're not going to you're not taking the kids up to Mohegan Sun this weekend, is what you're saying?
I am not.
Yeah.
Although I'm very good at craps. I'm not just saying that like I am, but that's not like making a bet.
Mm-hmm. Isn't that luck though?
Is it?
You're just rolling dice?
I mean, it depends. You got to get a feel of the vibes on the table,
Mm-hmm. It's like being like, I'm really good at roulette. I'm just really good.
I am good at roulette.
Get out of here. Oh my God. All right. So we disagreed on both. Good stuff.
All right.
Good stuff.
You ready to get into some good discussion?
Let's get into some good discussion.
Obi-Wan once thought as you do.
How perfect is our intro clip?
What was that face you just made, by the way?
Why
you were like...
What are you picking apart on my faces tonight? Like our audio listeners are like, don't care.
Because you literally go, yeah, let's get into that. And I was like, what? And I couldn't respond because I had hit the intro. So I hit the intro and I was like, wait, he just rolled his eyes at me?
I did not roll my eyes at all.
You're a little spicy tonight.
No. But how about that James Earl Jones introducing his own discussion, which is cool.
I love that. It is perfect. You're right. It was the perfect intro. We couldn't have planned it better. Although if I was planning this, I'd probably plan that, James Earl Jones would still be around and we wouldn't be having this discussion.
Well, yeah. So this is obviously going to be our tribute to James Earl Jones, specifically his impact on Star Wars. Obviously, I'm a fan of a lot of his work outside of Star Wars too. And he actually didn't live too far. He lived in New York, in Pauling, New York. And there's always stories you hear from people saying they see him in town, and he was always this pleasant, actually soft-spoken man, aside from his, very deep, heavy baritone timbre. But let's talk about it. So we know that David Prowse was Darth Vader, but George Lucas needed a darker voice, something sinister, something memorable. And it could have been Orson Welles. That was on the table. But it wound up being a man born in Mississippi, raised in Michigan, who grew up with a stutter. And that is James Earl Jones, who worked for just 2 hours on the original Star Wars. Didn't meet the cast, as far as I understand it. I don't think he met Carrie Fisher until like 40 years later. It might have even been on Big Bang Theory. But he only made $7,000 to be Darth Vader out of the gate. But little did he know it would become arguably, and I'll say factually, the most iconic voice in movie history, and propelled Darth Vader, and from a grander view, Star Wars into a cinematic juggernaut. So let's get into it. We'll talk about, his impact. I know there's a lot of factoids and trivia tidbits about how he got the role and what they were going for. But most importantly, just the impact of that voice. Because when you really think about it, there's been endless counts of iconic voices throughout film history. But this one, if you do Family Feud, this one's going to be number one off the board, I think.
I agree. That and potato salad. Did you get that joke?
No.
You didn't get that joke. It's from Family Guy.
Okay.
Anyway, they do this bit where they're like, "Show me potato salad." Anyway,
Deep
sorry,
cut.
I should have just
Quahog.
I should have just kept that in my head and not said it. Anyway, so James Earl Jones has one of the most, if not the most memorable voice of all time. You can immediately know who it is when you hear it. He was also Mufasa. Speaking from my childhood, he was Darth Vader and Mufasa. That moment where he comes through the clouds as Mufasa is so, again, one of the best moments in movies.
The remember part?
Yes. It's just crazy that someone's voice could have such an impact on not just movies and pop culture, but just people. Like, his voice touched so many people in such a positive way that who would have known for $7,000 that you would leave such a big impact on everything that we know.
It's crazy.
These big, not just the franchise, but everywhere. It's really sad that he's passed. We wish all the best to his family and friends and whatnot during this time. It's never easy, but he did leave behind him an amazing legacy that's never going to be topped. I don't think you could never. I can't think of a better villain just by their voice that you could be like, that's it. Like, he changed that role. And when you see clips from back in the day of David Prowse doing the voice, you're like, that's not right. That's not Vader.
Right.
And then it's just so incredible how much he changed what that character is. He made him the villain we know today and who we love to celebrate and hate a little bit, but then also loves weirdly because he's just that cool. He made him cool. He made him like one of the coolest Star Wars characters.
And made it, at least to me, seem more mysterious, because you're right, like the David Prowse clips of the actual on-set filming, it's a very higher pitched voice. It's like, "You are part of the Rebel Alliance and a traitor. Take her away." And it's like, fine. Like, this guy's your boss? Okay. But then you hear James Earl Jones pumped in there and you're like, oh man, like, I don't want to go wherever he's sending me. So I agree, with James Earl Jones and what he was able to bring to the table for a movie like when you think back to the original Star Wars, and it really was intended to be more of this like throwback campy tribute than this family soap opera, mythology that it became once this became a giant hit. George Lucas easily could have just been like, David, that's perfect. I love the non-seriousness of your voice, and like we very well could have just had something like that, because David Prowse was pushing hard to be like, no, I can do it, George. Let me be the voice. And George was like, nah, we're good. But then Orson Welles, like that could have been interesting too. But it's one of those things where you're just glad it ended up the way it ended up. Because I can't imagine Star Wars without that voice. And when you add in the breathing and just the physical presence and the shadow of Darth Vader, like James Earl Jones said, he's like, I'm just the special effects. He referred to himself as the special effects of Darth Vader. He never says like I was Darth Vader or stuff like that. He's a very humble guy. And I never heard anyone put it that way. And we've interviewed a ton of voice actors on TRB over the years, and him referring to himself as the special effects, I always found to be very interesting, because Star Wars is so, with Ben Burt and everything, it's all about visual and audio effects. And for James Earl Jones to say like, I'm on that's my team, that's my category, I'm special effects, is very cool.
I think it's because his voice is laid over live action, whereas a lot of the voice actors we speak to are either puppets, creatures, or animation.
Yeah,
this is completely different. This is someone that is speaking over someone else's acting.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, and what's interesting about because there's a clear difference in how Vader sounds from A New Hope to Empire Strikes Back. There's more of a mono sound in A New Hope. And I don't know if that's just like the technology they had at the time or the budget or whatever, but when he first speaks in The Empire Strikes Back, and I believe the line is "You found something," it's just even boomier than A New Hope, and you're just like, holy cow. And then I feel like when you have a great band or a great TV show, usually you're like, all right, the first album or the first season is so good, but if it's a great show or band, usually it's that second album that they really take it to their prime and they really just take off. And The Empire Strikes Back is certainly that for Star Wars for me, but also for Vader. Like the dialogue is just so good. Lawrence Kasdan, of course. He's as clumsy as he is stupid. It's just and the way that George, and I guess Irvin Kershner as the director, of course, wanted to make sure he stayed grounded in how he was delivering that, because I saw this interview with him and Conan O'Brien from it had to been the mid-90s when Conan O'Brien was still on Late Night with Conan O'Brien. And he was talking about the evolution of the voice, and Conan O'Brien's such a big Star Wars fan too. He's a nerd just like all of us. James Earl Jones was saying like, I wanted to take, because the story was evolving and it was getting more serious and darker, I wanted to get more theatrical with it because he's a stage actor. He's a very accomplished actor. Everyone, Star Wars fans always talk about his voice. This dude won Tony, Emmy. He had an honorary Oscar. He I forget what the term is, but he got them all. And he's just EGOT, right? EGOT them all. All right. I like it. But he was saying, I wanted to elevate the character and make him more theatrical. And George was like, no, you can't do that. I need him to, I need people to not know where this guy's at. I need him to sound a very certain, be at a certain level and never really go above that too much, so that you don't know what he's really going to do next. You don't want to hear him get too high or too low. You want him to be right there because that's where he feels like he needs to be. And he's like, okay, George, that's what you want. That's what you get. And man, I could listen to the audio clips specifically of Empire and Jedi, just with how crisp the sound was, forever, because those lines are just so well written, so well done. And like Harrison Ford always said, like, George, you could write this stuff, but you can't say it. A lot of these lines, you can imagine if David Prowse or somebody else doing them, you'd be like, oof, I don't know, that sounds a little cheesy. But when it comes out of James Earl Jones's mouth, you're like, that's awesome.
You pay attention. He's got a voice that you literally, the hairs in the back of your neck stand up. You're like, oh,
exactly. And then of course,
business.
The iconic line which is the biggest surprise to like David Prowse, even because I believe when he delivered it as Obi-Wan killed your father. And James Earl Jones was one of the earlier people to find out what the real line was. And I believe it was, Mark Hamill, Irvin Kershner, George Lucas, and then eventually James Earl Jones, who were the only ones to know because they didn't want it to get out. And then the whole, also one of the most misquoted lines of all time. Often people say, Luke, I am your father, but it's no, I am your father. I can't watch that scene and look at my arm right now. Look at that goosebump. Look at the hairs. I can't think of that scene without getting chills. And it's because of his voice, his delivery with the wind. And it like just the power and presence. Like it's one of those movies where sometimes I want to jack up the subwoofer because to get that booming Darth Vader sound. The voice of Darth Vader is its own character, honestly. And it's just what he was able to do with it is blows my mind, especially coming from someone who's such a soft-spoken, like calm-mannered Southern man,
The crazy thing about him too is that his voice is so perfect for the character, not just because of the costuming and the acting, but also the voice matches the music John Williams made too. Like the whole package of Darth Vader is just character perfection. It like you can't do any better from the way he looks, acts, sounds, his whole atmosphere around him, just oh my gosh, that's why he resonates so much with so many people because he's just the perfect villain. And a big part of that is the voice. Because if he went out there with like some squeaky voice or something, you'd be like, no one's going to be scared of this guy.
Exactly. Do you have any like favorite Darth Vader lines, whether they're like throwaway lines or like the big ones that are on posters and stuff? Do you have any like Vader lines in particular that you're like, oh, I love it?
I mean, I just like all Vader moments. I don't necessarily have a line that sticks out. I feel like if I was watching the movie, I'd be like, oh, I like that line. But I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I like the I am your father moment, of course. But the other Vader moment I like is when he takes his helmet off and talks to Luke in Return of the Jedi. And clearly that's not James Earl Jones. So it's kind of hard to pick a certain one. I know that you like the moment where he says like you're not a Jedi yet.
Yes.
Yeah, you've said that before that's like your favorite Vader moment.
Yeah, I have the the 1997 ornament still on my Christmas tree every year, and it plays that clip. The Force is with you, young Skywalker, but you are not a Jedi yet. And the way he like just says "yet" is just like he really just wants to make sure Luke knows that he's better than him. It's just it's how he delivered that. But then also like in Return of the Jedi, we get some brief emotional moments with Vader, especially that hallway scene with when they capture Luke on Endor, and he's like, "It's too late for me, son." And it's just like you almost get a little Mufasa in there a little bit, like when you listen to that line. And I feel like if they had an opportunity to expand upon that, he probably would have took it further. But I think they did the right thing by saying like, let's keep him when he's in that suit. Let's keep him right here, never too low, never too high, like I was saying before. But there really are so many iconic lines, and like I was saying before, he's as clumsy as he is stupid, or you have failed me for the last time. And I remember years ago we did this episode where we talked about how dramatic Darth Vader is. And
yeah, that was one of our top episodes, I feel.
We would always joke about how he'd always come in with mist. He needed to have his mist when he was walking into rooms. But that in Empire Strikes Back specifically, how many times he would just say, "Good." And it was,
oh my gosh, yes.
Remember that?
And it was just so funny. Good.
Yeah, just like now. Next time you watch Empire Strikes Back, and I think even maybe Return of the Jedi, just pay attention to how many times Darth Vader says, "Good, good." I can't do it. I'm more of a David Prowse myself. But.
I think I agree with Semper Fi Danny in the chat. Impressive, most impressive is probably my favorite. That one, or I know Michelle brought it up too when he says sister in Return of the Jedi. Your sister.
Sister.
Yeah, I love how he says that. Yeah, it's so good. So classy.
Yeah. And like he probably had free range to like try different things. And
They took the best take.
I,
Yeah.
I don't think Richard Marquand was the one making the call. It was probably George Lucas on the final cut. But that is true in a sense. Like, he didn't elevate the voice a lot. But in terms of how he would deliver certain words, he would get across what he was trying to achieve there. And he's like trying to needle Luke a little bit by speaking slowly and saying, like, you know, if you won't turn to the dark side, then perhaps she will. And it's just like, that's a very basic line. Because if I just read that myself, like, if you won't turn to the dark side, perhaps she will. You'd be like, all right, that's an okay line. But when you listen to him do it in Return of the Jedi, you're like, that is incredible. And it just goes to show it's the performance and the approach and the angle he took at a lot of these things. And also credit to whoever was doing the editing and George Lucas doing the final call. I'm like, all right, George, take out your highlighters. You have these 8 takes from James. Which one do you like here? And George was probably like, I like this one because that's how he said sister. And I like this one because that's how he said that.
Yeah.
And, I want him to yell General Veers. I don't want him to just say General Veers. And like, it's just, we gush about the original trilogy all the time. And my peak moment in Star Wars history where I don't think it's ever reached that summit is that moment where Luke finally meets him in The Empire Strikes Back and he tells him, you're not a Jedi yet. I think that might be my favorite line in movie history. I think that's
I know you've
so
said
good.
It's your favorite line in Star Wars because
I got it on the wall over there. Over there. Like, it's just my favorite. And
it's movie magic. It's pure, and he's a big part of it, of why it works.
Yeah, he is. Now, he's done a lot of other stuff too, and we could certainly touch on that because why ignore it? But do you have any other James Earl Jones movies that are your favorite? Like, obviously, you said Lion King, but
Lion King,
Sandlot. Did you get into watch Sandlot?
Sandlot's fine. I would say Lion King is definitely probably bigger in my childhood than anything else. Like, that movie, he made that character Mufasa such a big lion and like
100%.
a big powerful moment of him coming through the clouds to talk to Simba, and like when he says Simba, you're like, oh snap, he's back. Like, he's just got that voice that makes you turn, that makes you look and pay attention. And I can't even imagine how it feels to have a voice like that.
Oh my God.
Know you command the room that you're standing in. I wish I could be in the room when he recorded something, because I'm sure it was just like so wonderful to like witness him doing his work and showing his craft. And it's so inspiring to know that one of the big facts people were throwing around, the past few days is that he came from a stutter. To come from growing up with something that's such a setback
inspiring
to becoming the best in your field, the best in what you do, one of the top of all time. Like, it just shows you that like you can overcome anything if you really try hard and put your mind to it, so to speak. It reminds you that like it's okay to not be the best at some point, but if you keep working hard, you can get there.
I agree. I remember the first time I heard, I don't know if it's an interview with him or whatever, him saying that he had a stutter. I was like, whoa, really? That's wild,
Yeah.
But yeah, I think about the Lion King and like that scene, especially now as a dad.
Oh my gosh. Do you make it through without crying now you're
Oh,
dead?
are you kidding me? No, I can't get through that movie.
I
couldn't
mean,
get that
you're
through
talking
movie.
to a girl that can't get through Bluey without crying. Like, that's the point I'm at.
I get emotional a lot for a dude. Like, I do. And I don't mind admitting that. But that scene where it's him and Simba looking at the sunset, and he's like, soon the sun will set on my time here, and you will rise as the new king. I'm like, oh my God. It's just so like, it hits you right in the chest. And then of course, Field of Dreams, they use his speech about what's great about baseball, all that is good about.
Don't tell me, no spoilers. I haven't seen it.
You haven't seen? All right. Well, this isn't spoiling it. He's in Field of Dreams and he talks. But it's the speech they use for all baseball promos. It is the baseball speech. It's just about him talking about all that is good about baseball and all that is good about America and everything.
I think I gotta put that. Maybe I'll watch that this weekend when I'm home alone.
That movie is incredible, and you're gonna love it.
Am I gonna cry? Am I gonna cry?
Oh yeah.
Great.
You'll cry. Yeah, you'll for sure cry. If you don't cry, I'll be shocked. Actually, I may actually check on you. You may have something wrong with you if you don't cry at the end of that movie.
There might be actually something wrong with you.
Another cool story about James Earl Jones that I remember watching in an interview a long time ago is it might also been Conan, because Conan's very good at interviewing people. Like people like don't give him enough credit. You, like listen to his podcast with Harrison Ford and how he got him to open up. But because he knows how to talk to people in a real way. He's not just bloviating and that sort of thing. But this isn't a Conan O'Brien tribute. This is a James Earl Jones tribute. And he said, like, do people come up to you and ask you to do the lines? And he's like, they do. He's like, I don't remember the lines because I didn't really work that long on the movies. So I asked them to tell me which line they would like me to do, and then I do it. And I'm like, that's so sweet, you know? Because he could easily be like anyone else and say, like, oh, just leave me alone, you know? I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. But he actually lets people say, like, oh, can you do this line? And he does it for them. And I think that's a cool thing that he would do for fans, because like I said, he didn't live too far from where we are, and every story I heard from people meeting him at a market or walking down the street or whatever is he was this very polite, well-mannered, polite man, like a true gentleman. And it's funny, like when we compare him to Darth Vader, because Darth Vader is anything but a gentleman, and it just shows that he's that good of an actor, because sometimes I don't think voice actors get the credit they deserve. And for a role like this, because think about like Michael J. Fox doing the voice of like Stuart Little. You're like, all right, it's this little animated mouse, and you're like, all right, he's doing Michael J. Fox voice. But when you look at Darth Vader, it's already this intimidating presence, 7 feet tall, big mechanical looking thing. No one's ever seen anything like that before. And then the breathing sound and stuff. Like, in order to match that energy, you needed to really bring it. Like, the voice could have really fallen short to everything else that comes with the package of Darth Vader, including the lightsaber and the force powers, the choking. And you add his voice, and then all of a sudden you got, I find your lack of faith disturbing. Like, what a line! Like, all the other lines in A New Hope, like, a lot of people, like, whether it's Carrie Fisher or Mark Hamill or Harrison Ford, they're like, this is so wacky. Like, Harrison Ford had a line when he's talking to Leia as they're escaping the Death Star, and the line was supposed to be, what's he carrying that's so blasted important? And Harrison Ford's like, I'm not saying blasted, George. I'm not saying the word blasted. I'm just saying, what's he carrying that's so important? But with the Darth Vader lines, I don't know if I doubt he tweaked anything himself. He probably just took the lines and read them. So George Lucas wrote the first things we heard from Darth Vader. He wrote the script for A New Hope. And for whatever reason, with that voice, it didn't matter what was on those pages. It all worked because of the voice. And it's sort of
you
like,
probably do multiple takes. You're like, hey, this sounds weird, and then you say it differently.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. But let's not forget, Darth Vader's in A New Hope for like 19 minutes, I think. And he did only 2 hours of work. So it probably wasn't a ton of takes.
He made $7,000 in 2 hours.
In 1976.
I know that's like nothing nowadays, given like how much money Star Wars made, and I hope he eventually got paid way more, which I'm sure he did. But like getting paid $7,000 in 2 hours, that's pretty good.
Oh yeah, in 1976? Are you kidding me?
I'll take it. I'll take $7,000.
I would imagine that was probably one of his bigger jobs at the time.
Yeah.
I know he's been in a lot of, he was in a lot of things before that, but yeah, there's so much to be said about his approach to Darth Vader and all of it. But when it comes down to it, it was one of those perfect decisions George Lucas ended up making. Similar to, like, George Lucas also, he felt his movie wasn't going to be good until he heard it with John Williams' music. And I think the same probably can be said about Darth Vader, because all due respect to David Prowse, and he deserves all the respect in the world. I feel like people, they don't make fun of David Prowse, but because, he always wanted to be Darth Vader so bad. He wanted to come back in episode 3 in the suit, and they were like, no, we're going to have Hayden do it. And he's like, all right. Like, he always got slighted, and I feel bad about that. He never really got his due. I would have loved to have seen him walk out on stage at a celebration and get his rousing ovation, because he was the one doing the gripping and the lightsabers and like the menacing physical presence.
Yeah.
Yes, the pointing. But when you hear it with James Earl Jones's voice, Lucas must have been like, I think we have something here. And the smile that must have come over George's face when he was in that booth watching it all together with in the editing room with Marsha and the whole team, seeing him, hearing it, the full package, because they always say Darth Vader is a team effort. And even to this day with Obi-Wan, they have James Earl Jones with the re-speecher AI, which he signed off on. This isn't a Peter Cushing thing, because I guess that's getting hairy. Someone's suing Disney about Peter Cushing in Rogue One now, is what I heard.
Yeah, 8 years later.
Yeah, 8 years later.
His friend Kevin or something.
Even though his family like gave the blessing.
It. Yeah.
But so what's kind of cool, and I'm not the biggest fan of AI stuff, but I think for Vader, you can't recast the voice of Darth Vader. You just can't do that. So I think with Vader, it makes sense. In Obi-Wan, it sounded really good. We talked about that. He gave his blessing. He said, he's like, please have my voice. I want future generations to experience this how you want them to experience it. So we have his voice forever with his blessing. And I love that element of it, because if they do bring back Vader and other stuff, we know it's, well, in animated and the Lego stuff, it's other people. But with the main canon Star Wars stuff, we know it's always going to be James Earl Jones. And that makes me feel really good.
Yeah, it's a really nice feeling to know that his legacy continues on, even though he's no longer with us, unfortunately. I do love that I've learned a lot of like fun facts about him, and I was wondering if we can go through a couple that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
So I love that he was the first established celebrity to appear on this series Sesame Street in 1969. You know me, love the Muppets, love Sesame Street. And then also a really cool fun fact was he was the first African-American actor to play the President of the United States in the film The Man in 1972.
Holy cow. Wow.
I was like, wow, he's like a big first guy. Like he's done a lot of things first, and that's got to feel really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Is that it? Those are the facts?
Oh, those are my two favorites. I said
okay.
My favorites.
But I mean, yeah, and then I could talk about other stuff like The Sandlot. You've seen The Sandlot, right?
Yes, of course I've seen The Sandlot.
Well, you didn't see Field of Dreams, so I'm just making sure.
Oh my gosh.
Him talking to the boys about baseball and stuff, and he just isn't he one of those actors that you could just kind of wish you could just sit down and like him tell you stories? Honestly, that's that base level. Like I would love to just sit down by a fireplace and listen to James Earl Jones tell me stories. Like that's it. That would be the dream. But I'm so glad that we can say that he was on our team. He was a part of Star Wars, and I'm not trying to be hyperbolic about it, because people say this stuff a lot, especially with John Williams. But do you think he had such an impact that it helped Star Wars become what it is? Like, did that voice bring more people into theaters and that sort of thing? Because I think so.
I think Star Wars and Empire Strikes Back too, but especially Star Wars, the reason it did so well and is what it is because it had so many pieces of the puzzle that just fit perfectly. From the music to the acting to the voice acting to the special effects to the story itself. So many things hit that it was destined to be a mega hit, a blockbuster.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, tell me something that's wrong with it. I can't think of anything that's wrong with the original Star Wars. I have no problem with it.
No, it's the gold standard. No
right.
doubt about it.
And that's what I'm saying. There's like literally, what can you say about it that you don't like?
Yeah.
You can't.
Yeah, true. I'm just trying to think of like some of my other favorite Darth Vader lines. I do love his like little insults are the best ones in my opinion. Like I've told you, like I
the
said
Rogue
earlier,
One insult, don't choke on your aspirations. That was pretty funny. I loved that.
That one's pretty funny. But like I think he's as clumsy as he is stupid is like the best. It's like it's like a double insult.
The lack of faith one always makes me laugh.
as he's choking
Yeah.
Admiral Mahdi. Yeah,
Mhm.
that is a good one. I
It's always
agree.
just like this little like quip, like you said, like a little witty remark that he can't just leave it. He's got to leave you feeling bad after he's done whatever he just did to you.
Yeah,
Like
right.
even
And then
worse.
his final line in A New Hope, his first job to cash that $7,000 check is, "What?" So I wonder if that wasn't intended to be recorded, and he was just
Mhm.
in the booth, and they're like, "All right, James, we're gonna wrap it up here. We have one of those giant checks for you, like on the TV show, for 7,000." And he's like, "What?" Like, print. That's the line. We're putting that in the movie. But
Yeah.
I know we have a couple of super chats.
We do. So let's get to those. So first we have David Ford. Thank you so much. Who said, I drive back from St. Bernard with a generator and 2 large gas cans, start the generator, and then all of a sudden the freaking power is restored. Is is that a
A
James Earl
life,
Jones quote?
I think it's a life update, unless that's a deep cut
James
from
Earl Jones quote.
a movie. Yeah, I
But
don't
thank you
know.
for the super chat.
Thank you
That's so
so
kind of
much,
you. We
David.
really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Freezy2324 wouldn't be a show without you, bud. He says, what is your second favorite Vader line?
Man, I
Probably
think,
lack of faith. Like I just
yeah,
said, I find your lack of faith disturbing. It's not like so much merchandise and stuff, but it's just so good.
yeah. Mine is he's as clumsy as he is stupid, and then the first one being the Force is with you, young Skywalker, but you are not a Jedi yet.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because,
Jesus.
like, really, that line, like, it's so smart. And I don't know if that was in the original draft or if that's a Lawrence Kasdan line. In my head canon, it's a Lawrence Kasdan line because he is my Lord and Savior. But because it's Vader making sure he's putting Luke in his place out of the gate. Because he doesn't
Mhm.
know what this kid's about to bring to the table. So he's like, yeah, yeah, the Force is with you, but you're not a Jedi. So don't even try it.
It his whole thing, Vader, was that he hit you multiple points. It was the presence itself. He's this big guy, mask, crazy, scary. He's all in black. Then he hits you with the voice. He then hits you by getting in your head a little bit. And like we see that from the first moment he's with Leia. He's like, I know you're lying. He's like towering over her. He doesn't have to get that close to her, but he
Mhm.
does. He's
Yeah.
like looking like this down at her on
Mhm.
purpose. He's trying to be intimidating. And just like every aspect of Darth Vader makes you feel nervous, and the part of that is his like getting in your head. So I think that's one of his first things is like kind of the mental piece of like, okay, what can I get to knock this person down a little bit?
Oh, I just saw
What?
another one in the chat.
Yeah.
Uh, Padawan Michael, apology accepted, Captain Nita. Oh my god. Literally the dude is choking out. Then his I love his line to Lando, I'm altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further.
All his lines are so great.
I
All the
mean,
line.
I'm watching Empire tonight after we podcast. I don't care if we finish recording at midnight. I don't care how my day went. It's going down. I gotta man, I tell you, it's
I have to say, of the Star Wars lines from a character, the two best characters are Yoda and Vader. They have the best lines of like most meaningful, impactful lines that you remember time and time again. It's just so cool.
agreed. So it is sad to hear that James Earl Jones passed. I mean, granted he was 93, and all indications are he lived a wonderful life through
Mhm.
till the end. And it's one of those things where he will live on forever through
Mhm.
his gifts. Not just his voice, but for us, for Star Wars purposes, of course, helping bring Darth Vader to life. So rest in peace, James Earl Jones. Obviously, thank you for everything you gave to this franchise. We probably wouldn't be here talking about Star Wars today if he didn't lend his talents. So
Mhm.
a big loss, but he will be with us, no doubt, forever. Um, Now we get to find out about what our audience thinks on a particular topic in our next segment, Lacey.
All right, guys, time for resistance transmissions. My favorite segment of the show that lets you guys take part. Just like we were mentioning at the top, We're so proud to be a part of Screen Rant's top 10 Star Wars podcasts you should be listening to, or whatever the title was. We truly appreciate it. And this is one of the segments that I think got us on that list, which you guys love to do. I love to read it. So let's get into it. So the way this works is John puts up crazy, wacky situation on Twitter and social media, and you guys give your answers. And in advance, I don't know what the scenario or what he asked, and I don't know what your answers are. So we just read it as we go and we see what happens. So this past week, John put up the situation of describe the first time you saw a Star Wars movie in theaters. Which movie was it? Do you remember how you felt when you saw the words fly onto the screen? That's really nice. This is a nice one. This isn't a crazy, wacky one, but this is nice. Keeping the vibes. We got good vibes this episode. We went from the whole James Earl Jones.
Yeah.
Going to yeah. Okay. First up, we have Danny, Chibigon89. What up, Danny? And happy birthday, which John put in the notes, by the way. It's in here in bold.
Happy birthday, Danny.
So we knew before the top of the show, but
and there was an earthquake, I guess.
I heard.
Yeah, so I hope everyone's all right. And there's wildfires. So I hope everyone's doing all right out there.
Mm-hmm. All right. She says, for me, it was episode 1. Having seen the original trilogy in random order, I was still trying to get a sense of the storyline. But the moment the Star Wars opening crawl started, parenthesis, and gave me that sense of oh my God, I hate this word, familiarity. I know.
Is this your penguin?
I think this is. I can't say this word. All I knew was that I was in for a great time. Familiarity.
Familiarity.
Anyway,
you're adding an extra L in there.
I know. I don't know what I'm doing. Okay, I'm getting embarrassed. I'm gonna move on. Okay, right. Gem 1319. What up, Gem? Gem says my first Star Wars film was actually the animated Clone Wars film. When I was 8. I remember my dad taking me when it opened that weekend, and later that night we also watched his copy of A New Hope. My love for Star Wars was born on that day.
That is very cool. I had to get that on there because I wonder how many people could say their first theatrical Star Wars experience was the Clone Wars animated movie, 2008.
That is very cool. Next is Star Wars Spelt Out podcast at Star Wars Spelt. What up, guys? They said Return of the Jedi at Wonthaggi Cinema in Australia in 1983. I was 5. I went with my mom. I'm just hearing Bluey right now. I went with my mom and dad. I remember loving it, but being scared to death of the Emperor. I'd look away anytime he was on screen. That's great.
Lacey,
not great that you were scared, but
I have a quick update. Clayton, our good friend of the podcast, Clayton Sandell, just texted me. He is watching TRB live right now from 35,000 feet in the air on an airplane. So, what is up, Clayton? How you doing?
I love Clayton.
Flight attendant, can we get this man a drink, please? Thank you.
Yes. On us, even though we're not there.
I told Clayton he's gotta come back on the show, or Galactic Goonies.
Oh yes, that'd be great. Is he going to Japan? Are you going to Japan, Clayton?
He's got to be going to Japan.
You're going to Japan.
He's probably already going. He's going now. He's setting the tone.
Probably. Next is Mark Newbold. What up, Mark? How's it going? At prefect_timing. Mark said 1978 with my late dad. Oh, that's so sweet. Arrived at the Han vs. Greedo scene and blew me away. Wait, so you got into the theater at the Han scene? You just missed.
A little late. They were a little late. Mr. Newbold was trying to find parking on the street, I'm sure, and that's really cool.
Yeah, next is Brennan at Qui-Gon Bren. What up, Brennan? He said 1999, baby. Phantom Menace. I had watched the original trilogy a few times by then, but the theater experience at 7 years old is responsible for making me a lifelong Star Wars fan. That's awesome. It was the most exciting environment I'd ever experienced at that age. I was captivated.
That is awesome.
Awesome to hear.
Very cool, Brennan.
Next is Gabriel at get_good_Gabe. What up? They said I was 5 years old in 1983. Return of the Jedi was the second movie I saw in the theater. E.T. was my first. Man, you're going 2 for 2 there. When tickets sold out, they didn't stop selling them. I distinctly remember ushers coming in and telling all the kids to sit on the floor in the aisle or in the front of the theater. I watched that whole movie sitting on the floor at the front of the theater, staring straight up. And I remember loving every second of it. All fire codes were broken that day, but it was worth it.
That is a very cool story.
That is a very cool story. Next is Hannah Sutherland at Han Sutherland 28. What up, Hannah? She said, Revenge of the Sith in 2005. I was 7 and had been a Star Wars obsessive since I was introduced at 4. The opening battle and the happy landing had me absolutely transfixed.
Ah, nice. That is a big opening, Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah, very good opening. Next is Harvey Hammer at TDD Books. What up, Harvey? They said it was The Force Awakens, a real new release of life to my Star Wars fandom. I was 13 and so excited to learn about the brand new era and see the original trilogy cast on the big screen. I think I remember the cinema was playing Leia's theme before it started, but when I saw those words, it was like hyperspace. That is
really cool.
so awesome that your first in-theater experience was The Force Awakens, because that was a great one to have be your first movie.
At
It was like
13? Man.
everyone was coming back to the theater. Like, it reignited a love that I already, like, it just kind of, punch it Chewy type love for Star Wars kicked back into gear with The Force Awakens for me.
Very cool.
More 5150 at more 5150. What up, man? He said, I saw Return of the Jedi. Oh my God. Jedi in my hometown theater. I had seen Empire Strikes Back at my uncle's house on one of the first VCRs in my hometown. Seeing the crawl come across the screen before Return of the Jedi was one of the most exciting moments of my young life.
Very cool, Michael.
That's really cool. And last but not least is Trevor Lundy at Trevor Lundy. John?
Oh, way to get your handle, Trevor.
Way to get your handle, Trevor. That's a throwback for people.
Yeah, that's old school TRB stuff right there.
That is. My uncle took me in 1977 for what must have been my 4th birthday. It's the first memory I have. Wow. Oh my God. The first memory you have is Star Wars?
Epic.
Like, you just won being human, like living. You just won, Trevor. Since then, Star Wars has been a major guiding force, pun intended, in my life. I'm now 51, and I don't think a Christmas has happened without something under the tree from Star Wars.
Trevor.
First of all, epic gifts. Love that. But seriously, Trevor, you might win at best memory. Like, some people are like, oh, I remember this. I was at a playground, or, oh, my sister did this. My brother did this, or, oh, we went in the car somewhere. You literally said seeing Star Wars is your first memory.
Man, that's big.
Your brain said, nah, we're not missing this. We're remembering it. Like, that's how important
it shows the impact it has.
Yeah.
At 4. I don't know if I remember anything from when I was 4. Do you?
I remember being in a crib, like, very early on. Like, that's my first memory, being in a crib and, like, waiting for my dad to come upstairs. Like, that's my memory, but I don't remember how. I had to be like 2 or 3, honestly.
Yeah, right.
But it just makes me laugh, Trevor, because a lot of people jokingly online will be like, oh my God, I just unlocked a core memory for myself. You literally did. Like, you literally made up that meme saying online, core memory for Star Wars. So, John, what was your first theater experience with Star Wars?
It was the special edition. It wasn't opening night because A New Hope opened on January 31st. So it had to have been in February. So February 1997, I think I was 14, seeing A New Hope. And I had seen the Star Wars movies. This is obviously before the prequels, so it was just the 3 movies. But it just felt like I was watching the movie for the first time, because you see it on the big screen, and we didn't have it on home video at the time. So anytime I would watch Star Wars, it would be on channel 11 or whatever, on a 4x3 square TV, because we didn't have the widescreen TVs, showing how old I am, I guess. But I remember seeing it, and that stands out to me, seeing the special edition in theaters. I really felt like I was watching Star Wars for the first time again. And I remember sitting there. It was Sony theaters, the world famous Sony theaters, which you and I still go to. But I remember sitting there and watching it. I think I was with my dad at the time, and it was just a great experience.
It is so wild that you and I have probably passed each other in our lives at one point or another and just didn't know each other.
Probably.
Because we live so close to each other our whole
Mhm.
lives and didn't know each other until
Right.
7 years ago. So we've been going to the same movie theater, same mall, same everything. We've probably at some point passed each other and just didn't know it. And that is just so crazy. Like life
They're off
is
on the highway.
yeah, just crazy. So my not my favorite, but my first movie experience with Star Wars was The Phantom Menace at the famous Sony theaters. My dad took me because I had become obsessed with Star Wars from the VHSs, and then Star Wars came out, and I was so excited to see Luke Skywalker again. And I go to the movie theater, and he's not in it. I loved Padme. I thought Anakin was great. I was in 5th grade at the time. And I loved everything about it. The pod racing was great. I wanted to be Padme like so
Was it
bad.
an opening night or was it not?
I don't think it was opening. I don't
Oh,
think my dad would have.
So I was wondering, like, we could have been in the same theater.
I mean, maybe I could ask my dad. And Bill Gill might know, but he probably doesn't.
Were there a bunch of wackos in Jedi robes and lightsabers? And
I don't remember
that
that.
was us.
I do remember leaving though and turning to my dad and being like, "Okay, but where was Luke Skywalker?" My dad's like, "I don't know. What are you talking?" And my dad's like, "I don't know. I'm just here because you're here."
He's like, let's watch the movie.
I'll never forget. Bill Gill took us to see Spice World. Like I begged him to see Spice World. He fell asleep in the movie theater and was snoring so loud. I had to wake him up. I was like, "Dad, you're embarrassing me. This is Spice World."
I saw Spice World in theater
Did you?
for a different reason, but yeah.
Look, Spice World was fun.
It was
a fun movie.
It was
If
their
you
attempt
remember
at a
what it
hard
was.
day's night. Yeah.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
a cute movie, and I begged my parents for a Barbie doll, and
A
was
posh
like
Spice on the big screen though. It's worth all $7, you know?
I was always a big fan of Ginger, and I think it's because honestly, and this is gonna sound really stupid, but when I was younger and like we would play Spice Girls with like other girls, I would
You would
always get
play
what was
Spice Girls?
yeah, of course you would. And you would never like people would pick what they're like, "Oh, I'm posh, I'm baby, I'm whatever." I'd always get stuck being Ginger. Like that's who I always got, even though like I'm not redhead at all, but
No.
there was nothing.
Did you have to like did you guys wear like wigs to look like them and like do the thing?
No, but I remember it was like the biggest thing for me that I somehow at some store I was able to buy the lollipops that they had all the time, the Chubba Chubs ones.
Oh yeah. Yep.
I thought I was the coolest kid ever. I was
Oh.
like, I have a container of Chub Chub Pops. They're from Spice Girls. I thought I was the coolest.
Oh, and you clearly were.
Spoiler alert, I was not.
Oh,
I was
all right.
never the coolest. I'm
All right.
still not the coolest. So
Well, I just want to say quickly, thank you to everybody who responded to that. We put it on Blue Sky, we put it on Twitter, and a ton of people responded to it. So we couldn't get to all of them. I felt bad listening to Lacey read like the 10th one because there's a lot of words on it. What?
that makes me sound like I'm so dumb.
No, because there was a lot of words you had to say. Why do you always look at your angle is always so way off from what I'm trying to say.
The way it sounded when you were like, I'm sorry, Lisa, had to read that because there were a lot of words.
Look, there were a lot of syllables, and
I mean, you're not wrong.
no, it was a hearty Resistance Transmissions, is what I'm saying. Usually they're like quick one-liners, like
No, I
doing-
love it.
you were
I
doing
love
some
it.
audiobook stuff there.
I
but-
know, not anymore.
But yeah, all right. Well, thank you everybody
Oh,
for that,
God.
and great job, Gilly, getting us through that one. But
At least
yeah,
you can read.
a nice feel-good episode, which I think
Mhm.
right now is exactly what I needed. You needed.
I needed
and
it. It was a
everybody needed.
wild. It's been a wild week, 2 weeks in fandom, and everybody just needs
It
to
has.
take a
Yeah.
breath and remember that we're all here loving Star Wars, and
I
it's not
had
that serious.
I had some dude online like call me a bunch of names or something, and I replied to him with, Oh, did McDonald's give you apple slices instead of an extra fry in your Happy Meal today? And he was not happy about that response. But
There's no reason to be mad at anything about Star Wars at any time. Like, you can be disappointed as a fan, you can be, sad as a fan. You can say, "Hey, I don't really like this about Star Wars," but, like, the moment you start attacking other people about it, it just seems like
that's
maybe you
crazy.
need to take a walk. Maybe you need to step away for a little bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Order some Taco Bell from DoorDash because that's probably what I'm gonna do. It's become my weekly thing now that I
Oh,
do every night after
every
the
night?
podcast. No, after the podcast,
Oh,
every
you do?
week.
Really?
Yeah.
Late night Taco Bell? I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Interesting.
love it.
All right.
So good.
We got to do more live podcasting then. In person, I mean. Get some of that Taco Bell.
I love Taco Bell. I'm not ashamed of it. It is good.
It is good. We ate it on the show. People know how much we like Taco Bell.
The wildest thing about that episode is you ate all your tacos. I ate like 10 of them, 10 out of the 12. And everybody the next day was like, "You guys probably feel terrible." I felt great. Like,
I
I
didn't
don't
feel that great.
understand how that happened, but I felt like I could take on the world. And I don't know what that means.
That inspiring seasoned beef.
But I had fun doing it. Although I don't think people had fun listening to it, so I still apologize to this day to our audio listeners that were like, "This is disgusting. Could we not?"
Yeah. I don't even know. Do we still have that video or is that one gone?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's been an interesting transition a couple years here where we're trying to like rebuild what we had / find our files.
Yeah, but we want to thank everybody for listening and watching and being a part of TRB. Just heads up, Lacey and I have already seen Rebuild the Galaxy. We put our initial thoughts on social media. We are going to be doing a video talking about it, and we'll get that out for everybody. So for anybody, whether you have kids or you just like the silliness of the non-canon, non-serious Star Wars stuff, have a good time with it. It's 4 episodes. Mark Hamill is hilarious.
Oh, so good.
I laughed out. I was watching by myself, and if you laugh out loud when you're by yourself, something really gets you. Because usually if I'm in a theater and other people laugh, it makes me laugh and stuff. But if you're by yourself and you laugh at something you're watching, it got you. Mark Hamill got me like 90 seconds into this thing. And it's a fun little twists and turns, and I hope people enjoy it because it's fun and it's not serious. It's about literally toy bricks being a part of Star Wars. So check out, look for our video coming out on the channel on that.
We'll also put an audio version on our feed for you guys too.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. So check that out. But thank you for listening and watching and being a part of TRB. Whether this is your first time, welcome. We hope you are enjoying what we have here for you. Spread the word. Tell your friends, tell your coworkers, tell your classmates, whatever you got going on about what we have going on here. And of course, all the people who have been with us for a long time, thank you very much. Like I said before, make sure you are subscribed to the show on your favorite platform or right here on youtube.com/@TRB podcasts. And a special thank you. Lacey brought it up before, our Patreon, patreon.com/TRB podcast. We've had a bunch of people sign up recently through this and our other podcast, Nerdy and Nice. So yeah, if you like us talking Star Wars and you like our brand of discussion and chatting and our wonderful chemistry that we have here on the podcast, check out Nerdy and Nice, because we're talking about all the other nerdy stuff we love in movies and TV, like DC, Marvel, reality TV, documentaries, wrestling, Bridgerton, everything. We talk about all of it over there on Nerdy and Nice on its own platform. Also free to listen to. So just look up Nerdy and Nice podcast and make sure you subscribe to those. Come out on Mondays, including this next coming Monday. But patreon.com/TRB podcast. Tier start at $5. And your support goes a long way because it's just the two of us here running the ship, and everything you see from TRB comes from the two of us. So your support means a great deal to allow us to keep going, growing, and having a good time doing all this stuff that we love. A big shout out to the Generals and Spice Runners on Patreon: Carmelo, John Reese, Jetta Rosewater, Frank Grande, Nick Kratz, Chris Morales, Brian Smith, Danny, Mike Ramori, Brendan McLaughlin, Sneaky Zebra, Dave Hornack, Jolton Jedi DiMaggio, Colin Cormier, and Stephen Garrow. Colin, you beat me in fantasy football. How dare you? We have a TRB. We have a TRB fantasy football league, and I got smoked week 1. I was so confident. Lacey, you lost too, didn't you?
I lost by 4 points. I'm actually very proud of my.
Brutal.
Is that bad? 4 points?
Well, like losing by that much, you're like, what could have gone my way? It's a very.
Oh, I thought you were saying brutal as in like 4 points is a lot. I took it as like,
No.
4 points isn't that bad. Way to
no.
go, team.
You can get smashed. Like you can get smashed in fantasy football. So the TRB crew is 0-2 out of the gate. Not a good start. We'll see where we go from there.
As long as I beat John, though, I make the Hux joke. Like, I don't care if you win as long as it's not John. And
that's going to be an
matters.
interesting week. I wonder if we can do something around that for like a video or
I think
something.
it's week 11. You and I are playing. And right now, I'm beating you.
What if we go to a bar and watch football together and drink beers and see how we're doing against each other? What if we did that?
We could.
All right, cool.
We could.
She sounds really excited about that. Spice Runners, David Probus, Neil Shaw, Kendall Gellner, Andrew Staley, Jeremy Myers, and the Fort Worthian, and everyone who listens, however you like TRB. Lacey and I are getting together next week, and we are going to start planning for the future of TRB. So that's merch, shirts, plans, all that stuff coming your way. So get ready because this is where the fun begins. Whether you like Han Solo saying that or Anakin Skywalker, I'm saying it because it's true. So thank you, everybody. We'll be back next week with another episode of TRB and, of course, Nerdy Nights on Monday. It's supposed to be a great weekend where we are. We hope it is for you, too. Enjoy your weekends, and we'll see you next time here on the Resistance broadcast. We'll see you around, kids.